this could be it right here. Yeah. Is there right here?
Okay, but I'm saying So now we're like, it'll start off with me.
This is gonna be the 4th episode in a row where it started off with you doing something like that. Oh, okay. So now.
Well, because I was like, oh, dude, we can't keep going off this. Anyways, so 4th episode.
Yep, this will be the open. Driveline R&D Podcast.
No, but start when I said
Driveline.
We can't keep all this in.
Driveline Research and Drinks, episode 4.
I'm drinking a couple Tropic Haze.
Coming to you live from Seattle, Washington.
In LaCroix.
Pioneer Square, downtown.
Silver City is another name for Seattle. Most people don't know that, but Silver City is Seattle nickname. Yep.
No, it's not true. Silver City is an actual place.
Fact check me if I'm wrong. Shoot at me.
Silver City is a place.
Nice.
Is it? I'm just trying to spread misinformation.
Coming
about anything
to you
not related to baseball.
Live from another
Silver
neighborhood in Seattle, Pioneer Square, the Pioneer Collective.
Yeah, mixing up our
right now
settings.
New location. It's really late at night.
That's a Feynman quote.
That's not a Feynman quote. We're here. It's currently past midnight. It's 12:09.
Bro, if you're gonna look at your phone, show it to the camera.
Wednesday, February 26th. Well, it's actually the 27th now. But coming to you live from the collective because these two just wrapped up a couple of basketball games. A lot of people listen to these. They don't watch YouTube.
So then tell us what happened.
So you tell
us what happened, baby.
You just now putting up 2 fingers followed by 0.
What's the 2 stand
means
for?
20 points.
Anyone listening on Spotify is going to be very confused by that.
Okay, all 6 people.
Right. So Caravan just put up a 2 and then a 0, indicating that they went 2-0 tonight. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay. So 2-0 in the basketball game. Here we are. It's past midnight. Episode 4 of the podcast, Research and Drinks. What did you mentioned it? What is it?
Yeah, Silver City, Seattle, Washington.
The Tropic Haze. Pretty big fan.
Pretty fire.
Pretty big fan of the Tropic Haze. I think it's just like a classic as far as like you can always just get this at a gas station anywhere in Washington, I feel.
Quick note about beer. I was just in Utah for the weekend and
4%, baby.
So bad.
We got raised though.
It's like 4.5.
It's 5 now. It's 5 now. It used to be
5%.
3. Yeah, it went 3 up to 5. So everything you get on draft has to be below that.
Right, but you can still get bottled.
You can get bottles.
You can get bottled higher.
Yeah,
bottle service.
I remember because even when I went there, I was like so rattled because the first time I looked at the menu, I saw the 4s, and then it was like they would have the same beer with a higher percentage like next to it. You know, it was like.
Nice. What was the section labeled? I saw one menu that had Utah strength as the label. I was like,
really?
No way.
No way. Dude, they actually used to be way more ruthless. I don't know if they still do it, but like the server used to have to ask you, and they might still do this, be like, are you dining with us tonight? And you have to say yes, that you're eating or you're intending to eat, or they won't serve you alcohol. Like they won't. If it's like a restaurant, I think if it's a bar, that's different. But all right. So that's enough talk about the drinks, getting into the research.
But I will say one last thing on the drinks. There's a chance Lindley and I will get snacked during this episode because we pretty fatigued. Not a lot of food in our stomach. So let's get this
episode could get
I had 2 LaCroix to try to combat
could get a little interesting.
The buzz
should be exciting. Okay. R&D Podcast episode 4. What happened last week? What do we got? What's going on?
Rocker Steady got banged.
Rocker Steady got banged.
Resubmitted. So
we talked about the Rocker Steady.
Throwback to episode 2. Research sucks.
Oh yeah.
Rocker Steady got banged. What does that mean?
It's to apply. Submitted it to PeerJ, a peer-reviewed journal that doesn't actually publish sports science articles.
Yeah.
So
I mean, let this all out. You know.
Yeah.
Feel free to blast them.
Tell us how you really feel.
It's tough, man. It's a tough loss, especially
you could take them in a fight.
The amount of time. I don't know, man.
The amount of time is a lot.
No, but give them a quick overview of the process. Yeah, like what goes into even the administrative stuff in submitting a paper.
I mean, not even to mention the IRB stuff to get human research approved, but like controlling and making sure everything's controlled in the study takes longer than a more informal study, and then preparation for the actual publication. Like you can't just write the document and then be done. You have to like format it, turn on line numbers, like you have to take the figures and the figures and the tables out, put them in separate documents, you have to make sure that we had a subject in the manuscript, which is just like, it's just the document that has all of the content. And we had a human subject that is identifiable in there. So we have to make sure that's approved and they have a consent signed. So,
and then all of that work to package it all up, submit it, and then immediately get notified.
Within 12 hours. Woke up the next morning and they said they denied it.
Yeah,
so
just like, nope, we won't do this. And wait, why? And so Peer J is just because it's performance.
Performance.
They're out on anything performance related.
It has to be life science. So like we can pass with anatomy and like kinesiology, but
we should have just gone the injury prevention route. I don't
think you could with that project. That was the problem. Like we were saying, the intervention was a sports specific intervention, and if we took the application out of it, we would be basically saying if you moved it or you start in a different position, you're going to move different.
That's super tough.
Which isn't really that novel.
Do we want to talk really quickly about like the rocker study results though, and what we think?
Yeah, for sure. Do you want me? I mean, I can handle it, or you guys?
Spit it out, baby.
Basically, so we tested the traditional rocker drill.
Shout out Sam Breen, wrote the IRB, started all this again. There's two shout outs in a row.
And I will tag him in another tweet because he never gave me any acknowledgement.
That's messed up.
Still taking care of your cat, Sam.
When was that started?
Almost a year ago exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of the shorter durations of studies, honestly.
I want to say it was written, like the IRB and stuff was written pre 2019. Like I want to say end of 2018 is when that stuff was submitted, because it went up for expiration
in December
last winter. I think we started collections and stuff January, February-ish.
Gotcha. So we tested the regular rocker drill and then a variation of the rocker drill where the athlete can let their front foot come off the ground. And the rocker drill is when, for people who are unfamiliar, the pitcher puts their front foot in a place where it would typically land after a foot plant in a regular throw. They rock forward, rock backwards onto their back leg, and then deliver a pitch. The foot up variation is just allowing that front foot to come off the ground instead of keeping it planted the whole time. And then we also collected motion data on a regular pitch so we can compare the three. And we basically found there's significant differences in lower half mechanics, specifically the knee flexion. So how bent the athlete's knees were.
Which makes a lot of sense.
That was also
does make sense.
That was like the beginning theory of it all too, is because I want to say, summer 2018 is when we were looking really hard at the rocker, just because it was so hard to teach and for like people to do it correctly. And then that was kind of the first time when, and I don't know, again, it might've been Sam, might've been Jigs. I don't know exactly who it was on the floor, but it was like, I think this drill might just be like putting people in worse positions most of the time.
So was it just based on that, like observing, or was it like this athlete?
I think there were a lot of observations, anecdotes, and that led to this theory of like, I think the rocker is just like messing up a lot of people's front leg. It creates like a lot of fake lead leg blocks to where you go so deep into like front knee flexion. And then you have like that exaggerated extension well after release. So you're still like really deep in flexion.
And extend way faster too.
And so like, and that just creates like big problems elsewhere. I still think it's a really useful drill, and there are like a ton of benefits to it, and like isolating and constraining certain components. But it became an issue of what's the trade-off and its worth? Is it like getting to a point where we can teach all these people to do it correctly to where they get some benefits from it? Or across the board, are we just seeing like all of these people get put into worse positions and like more inefficient ones? And then Sam was like, all right, let's just do a study on it. And then we mocapped them and found, pretty whack positions that you like just force people into.
Yeah. So specifically the front knee was more flexed at foot plant. The pelvis was more closed. So their pelvis was facing more towards third or first base rather than facing towards home. And there were some differences in trunk positions, but the big two differences were front knee flexion and pelvis position.
Yeah, and I think another reason why it is could be such like a harmful drill is like one of the things that it does kind of like force you to do is create like rotational momentum without a linear component, right? So like when you're coming down the mountain, you create like linear momentum, and then you convert that into like rotational momentum. Like you're trying to like generate velocity, right? So the rocker just eliminates that ability. You have like a slight ability to like generate and create some like linear momentum,
Speak for yourself.
But it's mostly going to be rotational, and so much of like rotation is sequencing. And if you're sticking that front foot like down and keeping it, stuck and out in front, and eliminating that, impact and ground reaction force you get with that like lead leg, could just like mess up sequencing a lot. And that's what we were seeing in it. So just a small variation of like being able to lift your foot up and recreate like a stride foot plant. And some of those, ground reaction forces being in a better position down there. Yeah, pretty good results.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, just to kind of summarize, because I think we got a little bit stuck in nuances. So what did we find between foot up rocker and rocker? And
so the main conclusion that we were trying to figure out is if the foot up rocker alleviates some of those problems. Mm-hmm. And the foot up rocker put athletes into better positions that we think, because their knee was less flexed, so it was more straight at foot plant, and their pelvis was more open, which is what we look for in the throw as well. So we think that maybe using a foot up rocker instead of the regular rocker drill may be a good way to use the drill and get the benefits, but not have to worry about the negatives of using the drill and putting the athletes in bad positions.
Yep. But we submitted it and it got banked.
Yep. Yeah. But it's just submitted into Sport Archive, so hopefully hear back from them in the next couple of days.
So
honestly, I'm surprised how quickly it got banged. Because I mean, obviously it got banged not on content or the quality. It got banged on the like direction or category. Yeah. But even like they looked at this like
very quickly.
It was a day after, right?
Yeah. And I submitted it later in the afternoon, and I woke up to the email.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you think they just don't like you?
So if we had you submitted,
it has to be more like life sciences oriented, you said, right?
Yeah. Well,
just not applied performance, I don't think.
Okay, so
life sciences, it has to be like some form of basically, it's like a lot of the articles they publish, I think, are like cell biology and biology and things like even anatomy and kinesiology. I don't think is as common, like or as frequently of a published topic.
We should have done that's what I was saying earlier today with how like every article on like baseball and pitching and biomechanics starts off with that first sentence of
injury rates or continue to rise.
Yeah, injury rates are on the rise. Yeah, Tommy John's on the rise, whatever. Like every paper ever, I feel like starts with that sentence. And you're just like throwing that in there, just like make it more establish like the contextual purpose or whatever.
But if we mention like anything about athletes or baseball,
we would have had to have had some sort of like, I guess kinetic stuff. Like the stress metrics were in the hypothesis, found nothing really related to them, but maybe just like saying that we were looking for that.
Yeah.
Could have.
And no result is a result, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty big on that. Super big on that. Yeah. That's frustrating, but. Submitted to
Sport Archive, so preprint, which doesn't require peer review and it's less stringent.
You think we'll be able to find is it even worth like trying to find a journal that'll take it?
I don't know. Sport Archive should be really straightforward.
We should just copy paste it into a blog. Honestly,
yeah,
we could do further analysis too with SPM.
It's
a topic we could talk about on another time. That's true.
I honestly think we have enough with the data set right now and all the SPMs going on with that we could just,
I know you want more SPMs.
Dude, I don't know. That's my definitely most exciting thing from last week.
Yeah, to keep it on the biomech stuff, do you want to talk about, we kind of teased, I think, last episode that we're going to have all the audit results out, which we definitely don't.
If you're tuning
but
in,
not for lack of effort or lack of quantity.
If you're checking in because you got really excited about the buckets project that we mentioned last week, and you want to know how the metric audit is going,
all 3 of you,
you can rest assured it is not done. 9 days later, and I think we're close to 10,000 pages worth of PDFs.
I mean, definitely 10,000 pages. Some of them were like reran. Some of them were reran.
Some of them wrong. Yeah. Caravan has just been like running statistical tests like crazy on just like it's basically our off-season data set. It's over 800 sessions.
I mean, it's probably
800 tests to retest.
No, 800 sessions.
Combined,
800 sessions.
But like
total.
probably at 200 retests in there. It's
pretty
fatty.
fire.
It's pretty
Fatty.
fatty.
Yeah, I think there's over. I want to say there's over like 400 separate athletes. Might be more than that.
I think so too.
I think there's almost exactly 100 different athletes throwing above 90 miles an hour.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Few, yeah.
It's honestly insane.
Shout out Rachel.
It's so crazy to think about. It's wild. I just remember last year, like getting anyone to or 2 years ago, like looking at it was just like, oh, split the groups by 90 miles an hour. And our N was like 4, you know? It was like, well, we can't.
I've had to reshift because initially I think when the first time, I think our one SPM blog that we've published, we were doing like soft throws under 76, hard throws over 88, but that is so uneven now. So I've got to like reshift things a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, even like Friday morning, like we stayed up late. Anthony and I stayed up late at the collective last Thursday.
Yep. And Friday.
Cranking out stuff.
Then, no, not Friday.
Then Friday
Thursday,
morning.
Saturday, and Sunday.
Friday night you were doing your best to get allergies, but we'll talk about that off air.
Yes.
Friday morning, probably what do you think, 10, 12 PDFs? 10, 12 PDFs of like 80 pages for me.
Oh, some of them were like 270 pages. Some of them were like 700 pages.
I wasn't even looking at them. I was just like, all right, I'll give him to Anthony first. He'll give me like
the reason there's so many PDFs is because we're like testing every single metric that we can think of.
Are you guys just shifting the groups and comparing like different groups, bucketing differently?
I would say to give you like a general overview, I'll do a quick one without like getting too, but just like kind of because I've wanted to do like kind of a catch-all.
Yeah.
So first thing that we did was plotting both like segmented and non-segmented, and I'll explain in a second what I mean by segmented. But each metric, each of like the 200-ish metrics across like some of the performance metrics that we do have, like velo and efficiency, but like both by like groups, like grouping everyone in velo buckets, grouping everyone in certain like efficiency bucket, which is our normalized like torque to velocity and body weight and height, and grouping them based on how they improved from assessment and retest, how they improved from assessment and retest with their assessment values, kind of have an idea of, were people that started off with an elbow flexion at foot plant in this range more likely to gain velo compared to people that were in this range, doing that like on, the raw metrics, doing that across SPM, looking at people.
You're using SPM for this too?
Yeah.
SPM, Novas.
That's what I'm saying. Like 12 different SPMs. We SPM'd on straight, like hard throwers for soft throwers. People who gained velocity versus people who lost velocity. So like a paired SPM between assess and retest.
SPM to, have we talked about SPM?
No,
we have.
SPM is statistical parametric mapping, t-test over time. Quote Joe Marsh. Basically just like
addressed to Mike Rathwell.
Full signal analysis comparisons, right? I mean, you guys think of other way to explain that? Lindley?
No,
SPM. I mean,
the t-test over time is a really good.
Yeah.
I think if you were to look up statistical parametric mapping, you're going to get a very complex description, including the theory.
Continuous field theory.
Yeah, exactly. The theory that it goes behind the actual test. But really, if you're interpreting it and using the package in Python and MATLAB, it's pretty straightforward. It's just basically separating a full signal, which is just a measurement over time, and comparing two different of those signals or two groups of those at every time point.
Yeah. So in the past it was like, okay, let's compare hard throwers and soft throwers with elbow flexion of foot plant. Yeah. Right? Just that metric. SPM allows us to be like, okay, let's compare the elbow flexion of foot plant, but let's also compare the 20 frames before foot plant and the 20 frames after. Because maybe at foot plant it's not significant, but 15 frames before, 15 frames after, whatever, then you can kind of see, you're just able to
it's better for a good look, a more complete look into the signal, the metric, and it's also better for statistical bias as well, or scientific bias. And that's why I think that's one of the things that the creators of this package kind of targeted. But I think a lot of the value is just doing more tests and just learning more about the signal.
Yeah, the other useful analogy is like the picture versus a video kind of a thing. Like a normal t-test on just a discrete metric is just a picture, like comparing two pictures, right? Yep. But SPM is like comparing two videos, right? You're just able to look at more. You're getting more signal, more stuff to look at. So, and we did a lot with that, with the metric audit.
That's really good. I didn't know you guys were doing that.
So what do we got? Dude, we're doing a lot with it, and I can tell you that I said this to Caravan, but probably went into it way too naively, thinking we have a bigger data set, we'll be able to do more tests,
one big new discovery, or
feel more confident in it. I was thinking okay, yeah, we'll probably get more definitive, right? Last time, setting up the buckets, setting up drill scores, setting up metrics for importance, all that stuff. We had a much smaller data set, probably more localized minima and maxima with the guys that were involved in it. And there was way more clear-cut differences between groups.
Now you just have more corner cases, and
now it's
more different movement patterns.
We got
types of athletes.
The data set got way bigger, which was okay, yeah, signal might come through. But what we really did is we introduced way more movement patterns. There are.
What do you mean by movement pattern?
Originally when we did it, right, it was okay, yeah, there's a lot of ways to throw hard, but in general, these people are all doing these things, or most of these people are doing these things. Now it's we're introducing people that are throwing hard that aren't doing those things, right? People are, and that's something that I think is really tough. The more we get even more elite throwers is because they're really good problem solvers within the context of their body. And so their movement patterns, movement solutions are just outliers, right? Yeah. And so it's almost it's not hurting the data set because we're learning more, but it's a lot harder to simplify that into just a lot of the stuff with the buckets project and all these things is give a broad strokes good versus bad, more simplistic view of biomechanics and pitching mechanics, and in order to solve pitching mechanics, right, you need to be able to explain it simply, apply these simpler things, find the important metrics and stuff. And that's just not going to happen.
How do you plan to address that problem? If you're doing this really big and really complex analysis, how do you guys plan on?
We can use a tier system.
Yeah,
so because hopefully by the time this airs, we'll actually have.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it too. So
you want to tease the big four, and I'll say what my theories are, ideas after.
Yeah, that'll be good actually. Yeah, because I've been working on it the last couple days. So it was the last time around, let's just say there were 30-ish metrics that we were okay, these are really important in all hard throwers, or most hard throwers.
Or that we at least took in mind where they lay.
Yeah. We were hey, these are all probably important. Yeah. We'll track them and see what's going on. Now following like all of these tests and looking at it, that shrunk down a bunch. It's not like there's more metrics that we're finding out about, and definitely a lot of the ones that we thought were important in the past are showing up as just like less important. There are people out there that are able to throw with velocity that aren't doing the things that we thought were important. Is basically what's happening. Now there are still some that are like presenting themselves. Let's just say there's like 6. I think there's a little more than that, but what we're doing is we're setting up those as kind of like the top, the top 6 things, the primary metrics, where like we feel really confidently with this huge data set that like most of these stores are doing this thing. And then we're splitting the data sets by those metrics and cutoffs for like efficient and inefficient within those metrics. And then rerunning all those analyses and those groups to identify like prongs, like hierarchical, like branches that branch off of those metrics to identify what creates problem with those. And then that like top tier metric is like, it's like a gate or like a fail safe, it's like, if you're able to do this, it doesn't matter everything else below. Like as long as you're able to accomplish this one metric, it doesn't matter what these other things you're doing, as long as you're doing that. Now, if you aren't doing that, what could possibly be leading into that kind of a thing? Mm-hmm. And doing that across all of these other metrics.
And this is what I gave Brady a 2,000 page PDF of like probably almost exactly 24 hours ago.
Yeah. So think of it like it's kind of like a family tree, like that hierarchy, right? You have like all of these like groups at the top of like, okay, these are all these important things. And then you have like branched off metrics below. So Caravan reran all the stats on those, trying to find out like, okay, what are the things linked to these really important metrics?
Okay. What happens if somebody checks all those boxes and they don't throw hard?
Toss them out of the data set.
No. I'm not saying for the analysis, but like for somebody who comes in, what's our plan with like, obviously if somebody comes in and they don't hit 2 of these 6 metrics, then we attack those metrics with our program.
Yeah.
But in the case that, because I'm assuming there's going to be some cases like this, they come in and meet all of the requirements or all of those 6 very important metrics.
Yeah.
Does it get more granular after that?
That's just
after the top 4.
I think that's just like, that's the opportunity to learn from them. And like, that person being brought in is helpful because we're able to like figure out, all right, well, they're doing all this stuff. What is he not doing? It's like going wrong. Harder. Yeah, like what's going on here, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's how we'll go. I feel pretty confident about the metrics that we chose in that kind of like top tier, because like across all of those tests, it was showing up. And also the tests that like Caravan just ran, comparing, splitting those groups, like they all back each other up. Like they're all significant. Like if you have this, you probably have this kind of a thing. So
which is news to me because I haven't even,
So that's going on. I think
you just run the stats and then just send them over without
we did it last night at 2 a.m.
Yeah, from a pure like time point of view. Like I just figure interpreting it, it's gonna be like I'll look at it eventually, but I just figure like it's like vetting all the noise out.
He literally got him to me like 22 hours, 23 hours.
There's so much stuff.
Yeah. No, but so they're like all of those, they're backing each other up within those tests, which I think like just further reinforces and validates it. There's 2 that are probably gonna get banged. That aren't, but that's good. That's like an easier way to do it. So I think it's going really well. The first couple of days of it was just like a lot of trying to digest all those PDFs. I've definitely learned more about the data set in the last week than I have in the last 6 months, since the last time I did this. But the tough part is figuring out a way to relay that information to everyone else,
right?
That's like digestible, right? Like, and that's gonna be tough. Which is why I think this system will make sense, and hopefully by the time,
which is why it's taken also so long too.
Yeah,
kind of like,
yeah, We're
get back to
putting
people.
it's
so very easy. I mean, like we have tons of results. But it'd just be like
we could just info dump it.
Just info dump like 15 PDFs.
You'd literally be asking everyone on the floor to go through what we've gone through in the last like week and a half, which is just like, all right, here's hundreds of pages of PDFs worth of stats and graphs and all of these things. It's like
that's like a new certification. Foundations of biomech buckets.
Exactly. It's like, okay, now you know how
reading SPM results.
I also do think, and we haven't really talked about this, but I think that these like top tier metrics and stuff are going to make it, I don't know. I think they're going to make the athlete composite score like easier to figure out.
Yeah. Maybe, which I was like,
like in my mind, the issue with the athlete composite score was going to be like, if it was like 50 metrics, it's like, do we weighting all of those? Now, if it's just like a couple kind of a thing.
My biggest issue with it, what would be the idea of like confounding variables? Yeah. Like using certain, like multiple metrics.
What's the athlete composite score?
The athlete
TBD.
Yeah. The athlete composite score is like an attempt to simplify the biomechanics report into one metric. Which is just like very ambitious, and it's probably not going to work initially. It's probably going to be bad, but we'll like improve on it.
70 grade pitcher versus 80 grade.
It's just like at the end of your report, at the beginning of the report, like you just have a score, right? It's like your biomechanics report is a 92, right? And then deeper, we know all these other metrics, like, hey, here's how you're going to improve it, and then you improve these things, the score goes up, kind of thing. So like factoring in velocity, efficiency, all of these like metrics that we're talking about that are important, tailoring all of those into it. And that, in my mind, if we can come to something that is like very useful and does like a decent job, that makes the trainer's job, the player's job just like so much easier, right? You're talking about like, okay, you don't need to really know much about biomechanics at all because we're just giving you like one metric.
Is it going to only include biomechanics, or is it going to also include pitches like Arsenal score?
That's what that's what we talked about with other stuff. It'll just be like biomechanics, but then it can start to branch off into like, like a composite pitching score. Okay. But yeah, so I guess it's really like a biomechanics athlete composite score. But I think that'll just like help out so much. Like it just like simplifies it all, right? Like a catch-all metric. And then as we, run test it, it'll just break and we'll see why and hopefully improve it. But
I don't even think it's like the idea of it breaking so much. It'll just be
like
validation testing. Yeah. We'll see how it does initially. I think,
it'd be like hilarious if like we did like
I have the highest composite score.
It's like Bauer. We do Bauer or something. We do you, and it's like you have a way higher athlete composite score for some reason.
Yeah,
that would be an indication that it is a bad metric. But yeah, that's how the bucket and the metric audit is going.
Yeah,
you got anything else on that?
No, I was gonna pivot to the one other thing that we kind of like started doing these last couple days, but we'll definitely do next couple days as well, is force plate stuff. So currently
dude.
What?
As soon as you said that, I was like, force plates with the new facility and then new biomech reports and then force plate data incorporated into buckets audit V3.
And then you believed Joe who
I believed it.
Oh, that was you?
He said it so seriously and it was so absurd that it was like beyond the level of joke. It was beyond
like 40,000 square feet of force.
Dude,
so what we learned today was Kyle Lindley is extremely gullible. Yeah. Because our director of R&D, Joe Marsh, shout out Joe Marsh. We'll throw him a tag on Twitter. But he made a joke at research lunch today about our new, much larger facility being covered in force plates or something. Yeah. And oh, really? You got so pumped.
I didn't say, oh, really? I said, you're kidding, right? Yeah. There's a difference.
It's like, no, we're gonna.
Nope.
And then
we just had a meeting about basically force plate projects late last week.
The entire floor is gonna
late last week. So I was like, I wasn't there for the end of that meeting, but like, if that was the result,
It's gonna be one giant force plate.
Pretty fire meeting.
Yeah, and Kyle went up to him after. Is like, do you think we get our apartment also covered in force plates? So we just run test at home.
Yeah,
I think force plates are gonna be big, but I think we were doing so much with the data we have.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, force plate right now.
I don't know if it's going to be groundbreaking.
Yeah, right. Or, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, force plate right now is honestly also a good direction for the high performance department to consolidate KPIs and track athlete performance.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I met with Dan Adams, our high performance head, and we have a couple things to do, or at least on my side. I want to cut down the processing speed that strength interns or strength like coaches in general are involved in when they take out we're currently using ForceDex, a force play software, and they export a CSV. It's like not necessarily the best formatted. They have to do some spreadsheet manipulation.
Yep.
Put in a database, impute all these metrics that we want, and then like sort the database by level of player, level of like whatever the force plate metric is. Look, I honestly haven't looked at it all. The first, in my mind, it's a 3-pronged problem. One is improving the processing speed, which I started working on. Somewhat straightforward, not too worried about it. Second is tying force plate KPIs to other performance metrics, whether it's hitting metrics, EV, LA, WOBA, whatever, pitching metrics, the easy ones, pitch philo, so forth.
Right.
And then third, setting up either a app or a database that will return force plates, numbers right away by whatever drop-down menu we want. Because right now, which I don't know if you guys have seen actually, or you might have, it's stored in a OneDrive
spreadsheet.
It's stored like a OneDrive spreadsheet, which I honestly don't even know. I don't know. But either way, I mean, like it's kind of nice now, but it's already like quite slow.
Right.
And we have, we're like a couple months in. It's only gonna get bigger.
Yeah.
So it's 3 steps to it. Kyle's actually looked at it quite a bit. So I'm actually gonna catch up on what he's done tomorrow. But we could shave off a little bit of time on my workload and talk about it now. So I mean, what's your initial impression of actually working, connecting some of the force plate data to other department metrics?
I think for the high performance team specifically, it's really exciting because we've been kind of working on trying to figure out ways to measure high performance improvements or strength
assessment
improvements. Just improving their assessment and retest. But so basically, Dan has been reporting every few weeks. The managers or the department heads give updates on certain things like KPIs and KPI development. So I helped them put together some just relationships with force plate data and the spreadsheet you were mentioning with hitting KPIs and pitching KPIs from the tools that we have that we can download for the whole team, which just basically includes the gym. So we were able to just put together a list of force plate metrics that are related to basically people who do this good also do better in skilled performance. So most of them are pretty obvious. It's just like, it was a very simple analysis, not very in depth.
What are some things that you think like I should do or that we should do? Because I have a couple ideas myself. I haven't looked at it that much, so my ideas are fairly nascent, to use a SAT vocab word. NASCENT. Look it up. You know what it means?
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, bro, that's because that's why you didn't get an 800 on SAT reading.
Yeah, I did really bad on that.
And that was just a guess. That's a guess, by the way. You could have told me. I mean, I don't know. Hey, you know who did? Describe what's going on for the people that aren't watching the video.
Caravan is pointing at himself with 2 thumbs because he got an 800 on the reading.
That's the only thing I got.
That's very impressive. Are you serious?
I mean,
you probably did very good on the math too.
We can talk about it later.
Now he's getting shy. Now he's
2370. What were we saying about the force plate?
No, you're kidding.
Got a 770 on the math because I accidentally skipped the question. What were you saying about the force plate stuff?
Oh my God. That's absurd. That's why I went to ASU. I'm so bad at those tests.
Yeah, dude, we get it. Forks up. We don't have to drop it every podcast.
Devil's
it's crazy too because like English is your 3rd language.
Like, and I only know 2 languages too.
Yeah. It's pretty damning though because math stats is your first language. So.
Dude, I legitimately, I'll see if I can still log on a college board or whatever. I actually accidentally skipped the math question because I like missed the question. I was like, oh, what did I miss? And I was like looking at it, and because they give you like, you know, like I think when I took it, you could still get negative points if you like. I think you might still. I don't know what the testing procedure is, but you can still get negative points if you like guess wrongly.
Oh yeah.
So they break it down by like, what did you get wrong out of the ones you did fill in?
Right.
How many did you not fill in? And I'm like looking at it, and it's like, oh yeah, and then left one blank. I was like, why would I leave anything blank?
Oh, wow.
And I looked at it, and it was like they classify easy, medium, hard.
Damn.
And it was an easy one too. I think I just breezed through it.
It was like a geometry question or something.
Yeah. Anyways, obviously keeping that in so I can keep my SAT credit up. But anyways, well, really quickly, what I was going to say is Dan Adams mostly has pitched me on a couple of things, but I'm really curious to hear like what, given unlimited time and resources, you would want to pursue in terms of like force plate metrics to more tangible performance metrics.
Um.
And I will do exactly whatever you say, so be careful.
No, I think doing more of putting different groups of athletes together. This was only basically these metrics only looked at the entire data set we had for force plates.
No bucketed analysis, kind of. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So instead of changing, these are strong people, or what we classify as strong people, and these are and how their metrics compare to performance KPIs. Their force plate metrics compare to skilled performance KPIs, and this is how weaker or less strong.
You don't have to talk about yourself like that.
Yeah. I'm working on my force plate measurements. But yeah, there just like was no separation of skill or strength or age or at least in my analysis, because it was just I was putting something pretty quick together to get a decent idea of which
thing. It was the first thing we'd really done with the new like force plate software. Mm-hmm. So definitely, I've been like kind of going off that. Like the one thing that is kind of my mind is looking at asymmetries related to handedness.
Yeah, and that's something we didn't. It wasn't included because I didn't go through the process of getting handedness into the data set, so I wasn't able to adjust the asymmetry values.
Interesting.
So it was just going straight off left and right instead of front and back, or like asymmetries I wasn't able to separate between lefty and righty.
That's really interesting. I think I've talked with Dan about this before too, about some other like range of motion stuff in the assessment and just like general strength stuff. And typically in like athletic training, PT, all that stuff, you know, like asymmetry is like very, very bad, right? But is there an argument that like in the pitching motion, symmetry is actually bad?
Because because both sides probably have very different
the left
roles.
leg doesn't do what the right leg does, right? Like very different things going on.
The correct asymmetry might actually be better than symmetry.
Yeah. We talked about that like quite a bit. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I think the idea is like right now we're not like classifying stuff as like good or bad. Yeah. We just like want to get feedback.
It'd be really interesting if something came out like that, like lead leg asymmetry is actually very beneficial, you know, or something like that. Like I don't even know what you'd hypothesize, but I mean, like asymmetries exist in the arms, just from like shoulder range of motion, right? Like, you just have like ER, IR for days, you know.
They talk about that in PT school. I know somebody in PT school right now.
Who do you know? Who do you know in PT school?
Yeah, interesting.
She was telling me that they always talk about...
Drop a name, bro.
My girlfriend, Marissa Hamilton, she is the greatest, going to the #1 hospital in America for PT school. But anyways...
Oh, wow. That's a pretty good plug.
Yes. They talk about baseball asymmetries and shoulder rotation all the time, apparently.
And it being bad?
Just how baseball players have worse or have different... range of motion in their...
I hope it's dropped in like that terminology. It's like, it's different, not necessarily bad, you know?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Well, there is like the whole, you know, like more external range of motion, bad. There's that whole camp. in baseball and pitching biomechanics, which we just like don't really see in our data set.
As far as stress goes on the arm.
Yeah, everything. Like harder throwers just have more external rotation, less stress. It's just like we're not seeing that much. Like ER, range of motion. That was kind of like the OG knock on weighted balls. Beyond like stress and everything else was like weighted balls increase ER, range of motion, and that's bad. But like we're just not seeing that in the data set. Like that's actually one of the main metrics. MER is so much higher in harder throwers than soft throwers.
That's probably why I don't throw very hard then.
I think it's just an adaptation. Mm-hmm. I like don't really see it as like you need this much to throw. Yeah. It's just like the more you throw, you like adapt to it. And maybe like there's an argument that it's bad.
That it's kind of advantageous.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just this, it's the same. It's like a similar idea to elbow flexion.
Yeah, you got more room to work with, like generate velocity. Yeah, and I'd be worried, like, you know, I think that's how the conversation that Dan and I were having was like, say you fail one of these like ROM tests or movement screens, you know, and you're trying to correct this thing that like your body has adapted to and solved. And that's one thing I was saying. I feel like that's a really common question nowadays from like current coaches, because there's a lot of screens out there. You've got like on base, all these things. Movement screen, especially on the strength and conditioning side, right? Movement screens, range of motions are like big topic of interest. And
that was all people presented about at Slugfest.
Yeah.
There were like a handful of presentations on using movement screens.
I think it's a very contentious topic.
I mean, besides like, inner tester reliability and everything.
Oh, like, that too.
That's one of the things that, you know, makes me not super enthusiastic to base too much stuff. I mean, I have ran, you know, stats on ROM measurements across like a larger data set, but there's just like so much noise.
And reliability.
Yeah.
Which that's not even like taking in consideration whether or not it matters. Just
exactly.
Can we actually measure it reliably enough?
Yeah.
The other thing too, and I like my take on it is that it's just a tool in the toolbox, and like it's a secondary tool. It's not the primary tool. The primary tool is a radar gun, right? Like if a dude's on the mound and he's pumping 98, but he fails 15 of the 30 screens. So what? You know, like that's kind of like where it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, but dude has no velocity, arms always hurting, can't locate. Then it's like, okay, how do we solve these issues? Maybe something's wrong in the movement screen. You know, it's like use that as a potential tool to fix things, but don't like, I think the flip side of that is a more dangerous approach. Like using the movement screen as like the starting point
to evaluate a player
could be like, kind of dangerous, you know, because like
that's why we're trying
dude's hitting 400 and dropping nukes, and you're trying to like fix something in his back hip that's like making his swing perfect, you know.
And I think that is why like I definitely am excited about having a more discrete quantitative database in the force split assessments rather than these also ROM screens that we like also change up every couple months.
Yeah. Also pairing that with force plate data in the movement. With the new facility.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting. And we're also rolling out a new biomechanics report to measure range of motion in the actual applied movement rather than the table. So typically a coach or trainer or physical therapist would measure range of motion on a table, on a PT table, like passive and maybe active, but very rarely or never, because it's hard to measure, figuring out how an athlete moves, like what their range of motion is actually in the throw. So MER, for
it's just so much, I think it's so much more beneficial to be like movement context based, you know? Like I don't really care as much about how you move laying face down on a table on your back, right? It's like, what are you doing when your trunk is at an angle of like 15 degrees and you're laterally tilted and you're rotating at 1,000 degrees per second, you know, like that's when like the range of motion matters. Yeah. Which is also a tough part of like, I think that is one of the biggest limitations in biomechanics on the pitching side is like scapular modeling, you know, from like the arm side of things. because it's just like so tough.
Oh, really quick. For the force plate stuff you did you only did pitching and hitting metrics? Did you do any like biomech stuff with force plate?
No biomechanics stuff.
Okay. I thought you were gonna do like front knee angular velocity or something. I thought that was something I heard Dan say.
All the high performance staff, they have a bunch of like really cool ideas they want to look at.
Yeah.
But this was I was frantically trying to get some deliverable for some relationship, and it was just like a short list of.
We'll put together that athlete composite score. And reverse run it on everyone, and then correlate it to force plate data.
That would be sweet. Body weight matters.
It'll be easy.
That'll be the fail safe.
When the whole facility is just covered in force plates, that'll be really easy to
get everyone.
Dude, it'll be longitudinal. With what kind of like GRF do you have? Just walking around. That's what we were saying.
I asked Joe. Imagine if we were recording all day. Imagine the amount of data coming out of Driveline every single day. If all the floor had force plates.
That just sounds terrible. That just sounds terrible.
To save our own credibility, we're going to cut that part out.
That sounds terrible, too, because all of those force plates sample at 1,000 hertz.
Yeah.
That's 1,000 data points.
Don't make me ask. Don't make me ask what sampling rate is again.
Dude, that would be just. I mean, I'm very excited for the force plates. I think they're going to help a ton, but I do think force plates are pretty overrated.
And if you think he's being
baseball player development,
he's being critical now, you should have heard him off air.
That's my hot take on force plates. I think they're going to be great. I'm very excited. I think they're going to be more beneficial for us on the research side, not as much on the development side, because we already do a lot with the pitching biomech report. It'll help out, but really, it's going to add a couple more metrics. In my mind, it's not like it's now going to be like we're going to double the amount of metrics that we're getting from the biomech report. I still think mocap is like the gold standard and everything. Adding force plates into that is going to be helpful. I actually think going like just force plates would be very tough. Like if you had to have one or the other. The way I look at it is like if you had to have one or the other, the mocap lab or force plates.
There's no question. Also, we got to do everything we can to keep my force plate data out of there, because that is going to be so bad for looking at force plate data.
We get it, dude. You're strong.
Compared to, I mean, it's more me dissing myself for on like any sort of baseball. Yeah.
That's true. I wouldn't be too worried about it.
You guys trying to address some of the? We got some questions coming in. Some ardent fans.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, this fan wrote into customer relations. Jared Skolnicki calls himself Swole Nicky, by the way, and he will Venmo you for that. He will Venmo you for that. He'll pay me $1 every time I drop Swole Nicky. So that's already $3, Jared, on this episode. But yeah,
so we got some questions.
We got some very good questions. I'm assuming, should we shout her out? I'm assuming she's cool.
Maybe not. Maybe we'll.
All right. We'll give an initial so she'll know what we're talking about.
We got some questions from a high school student.
Okay. And very good questions, I think.
Yeah, really good questions.
So there's a couple that are more in depth.
Yes.
So
some of these will get heady.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is like really cool. I think getting a high school, person just like writes in these things. This is like really fire questions.
Yeah.
And to just like reach out like this. So, first question: good pitches are ones that diverge from each other on a movement or shape basis. Is this also true for pitches that have a big difference in speed?
So first off, I just want to lead off saying like we kind of tackled this. We intentionally didn't do any work or research previously to this. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what's like, there's a couple answers. I'll say I'm not going to give a hard answer myself right now. I think what I thought would be cool would be to talk about how we'd approach this problem, how to like potentially get a concrete answer, and then between now and when the episode airs, we could whip something up and push it to Twitter. But I was curious, since this is a little bit more sabermetrically founded. First off, like how would you guys approach this question? And then I might give my thoughts, but to restate, basically determining how, like, if pitches are good, that like someone's pitch arsenal, if having a big difference in speed is a good thing.
So I immediately think of it like my answer would be speed as like a 33% contributor, simply from the perspective of shape is 2-dimensional, and then adding in speed is like the third dimension of the way that the ball can travel. So like if you just look at the shape of the pitch in terms of horizontal and vertical break, that's just like, you know, it's vertical movement.
Which is related, which is like, like the break stems in part from the speed.
Right. Yeah. So you've got those 2 dimensions of a vertical component and a horizontal component. And now speed is like that third dimension of the, you know, along the distance between like you and the pitcher. Right. So I would just guess that if you're looking on it strictly from like a shape basis,
like a theoretical physics.
Yeah. You know, it's just like, that's how I would see it contributing. So yeah, that's how I would that's my first thought on it.
Yeah. What do you think, Lindley?
I don't know. It's tough because you're not throwing a fastball isn't going to have a big difference in speed. So
with what?
With off speed. So like if you're looking at the effect of just speed, it's going to be really hard because you can't throw a fastball really hard and then throw it. If you're throwing a 90 mile an hour fastball, a 70 mile an hour fastball isn't a thing. So like I'm trying to think. Like I could compare, and I can't compare a 60 mile an hour curveball to a 90 mile an hour curveball.
Well, I think what she's like asking basically is everything being the same, or this is the way I approach it. So the idea is like everything else being the same. Someone has a 95 mile an hour fastball and an 85 mile an hour curveball. Would it be better for that curveball to be 88, 82, 80? You know what I mean? Because then the gap is bigger. Where does the difference in gap kind of tail off? So that's how I would approach it, and how I intend to kind of approach it. Like keeping the constraints as similar as possible. Yeah. You know, we'll throw in parameters for the movement. So we'll have like pitchers who fall into these movement differences, right? And then like, you know, get sort of like whether it's like WOBA, XWOBA, whatever metric we decide, looking at what kind of results these pitchers who have a 12 mile an hour gap between a curveball and fastball, and again, as everything else being equal as much as possible. Yeah. How did that fare? The 14 mile an hour gap, 10 mile an hour gap, that kind of stuff. So that's like how I would approach these questions in general. Right. Trying to keep everything as similar as possible. Yeah. And I'll say kind of on that end, just like a general sabermetric, you know, initial starting point when approaching these issues is, and I think like I certainly wasn't as aware of this when I first started working for Driveline baseball. I thought of stuff more in terms of purely mathematical, and I think just like, you know, having enough knowledge about both baseball and tracking technologies kind of is really important, because whenever you run large data sets or large data projects on MLB public data, you have to also adjust for calibration differences between stadiums, between like temperature, all this kind of stuff. So almost any general analysis question like this, you have to already be accounting for, you have to like almost be running a mixed model, accounting for random effects in home stadium. You know what I mean? Home stadium platoon splits. You know, if someone faces a unfavorable platoon split in a small sample size, they're gonna get hammered. Right. Doesn't mean their stuff is bad. You know, a couple things. Yeah. So, so I'll say again, we'll hopefully have something solid for you by the time this airs. But my first instinct is just to constrain everything as similar as possible, and then look at differences in speed and see what kind of results we get from that. Yeah, like if there were two pitchers and they both had the exact same like spread on a break plot, but then the velocity range of the pitches on the break plot, like one of them was small and then the other was large, like is there a significant difference? Yeah, exactly.
I think that makes sense. Like if the break plot's the same in 2 dimensions, you know, for H break and V break, and then you just spread out. That's that'd be interesting. I would guess that it would matter. Yeah. That's my initial thought.
I guess it would matter. My instinct is to say there's probably like a solid sweet spot.
My guess is that it would matter, but the fastball velocity reigns king. Yeah. So like having a smaller velo spread, but your fastball velocity is 98 is probably better than the person who's like average fastball velo is like 95.
Right. And has the same spread.
A bigger velocity spread, right? Yeah. In general, I just think it's one of those things where like velocity is going to reign king again.
Yeah.
And if like the fastball velocity is up there, then like having a greater range as far as like difference in speed isn't going to matter as much.
I think it could. I have a big like theory about the whole tunneling thing, and pitches can be
big
very
theory time. Big theory time.
Can be big.
This could be a new segment.
Yeah.
It could be big.
Big theory of the day.
Spit it out, baby.
I keep getting interrupted. I can't. My train of thought is just getting destroyed.
And that's all for theory time today.
The difference from the mean of pitchers of your type matters. So like the spread.
Oh yeah.
The spread is going to be affected by how different your curveball is from the average curveball, like velocity and shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think outliers are always going to win.
Yeah, but I was gonna say just looking back to your point, just to like put it maybe another perspective. Yeah, I agree, and I think it'd be like a silly way to look at it would be someone has a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, you have an 82-mile-an-hour curveball. We found across a league-wide analysis that 13 miles an hour is like the best gap between your breaking stuff and fastball.
Yeah.
And then like the dude gains like 3 miles an hour on his fastball. Like, oh no, like his arsenal got way worse. Like, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the whole perception thing is big on that. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about with if you can deviate from the average, the more you can within your own like group,
cohort.
Yeah,
it's another maybe not SAT level word, but
within your cohort, right?
A little bit more advanced.
2370, dude, that's unreal.
I mean, we don't have to keep talking about it.
It is wild.
I'm blown away.
Second question, which is probably much more complex and technical.
Yeah.
I jotted on a couple things just so we don't get too loopy on it.
Yeah, this is a good one. This is a very, very pitch design realmed question so far.
I don't want to. I think it's a really good question. I think if we answer it properly, it's very valuable. We should probably try not to spend more than a couple minutes on it.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is referring to Dan O'Coin, Dan's spin axis article. Why does gyro spin increase with glove side movement and decrease with arm side movement?
So first off, I was going to say potentially.
There's a second part to this question.
Well, yeah.
I'll read it now. It mentioned that pitches that move glove side will gain spin efficiency from this, and the opposite for pitches that move arm side. But it didn't go into detail as far as what about a pitch moving glove side makes the gyro spin act in this manner. Is there any more information on this? Dude, that is a wild question for someone in high school.
Yeah.
That is like, I can't, reading Dan's article, I didn't even think of that.
I was going to say, first off, not that Dan needs any more shout outs, but, shout out Dan O'Coin. But I think that, first off, I think that article is probably one of the best ones, if not the best, that Drivelin's ever released.
Very, very heady topic.
Extremely, extremely technical. And I honestly, the one I probably reference the most when I look back at stuff. Because for me, and this probably stems apart from my not actual having a baseball background, but spin axis and, like gyro degrees are, I understand them. I understand them conceptually, but I often have a very hard time like seeing them in real time or like applying them, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I'll say like if you tell me numbers and ask me like what results are expected of that, I can give you that. But like just the conceptual thing is pretty tough for me. So I always like read back on that or look back on, there's a couple other like really good articles out there by like Nathan, Kagan, a few other people.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say since you designed the initial edge trajectories based off gyro degree, if you want an answer from like your background, and then I'll answer like my more like theoretical by the book answer.
Yeah.
And then we can loop back to Lindley for some big theories on it.
Yeah. Okay. This is a really tough thing to explain in person.
Yeah, and I was gonna say we're gonna answer it in 20 seconds or less.
We're gonna attempt to do that on a podcast. Okay, so you have spin axis, which sets the like orientation for basically horizontal and vertical brake of the pitch as far as like Magnus force goes. The gyro degree is like once you've kind of set that axis, how gyroscopic the pitch is now spinning. As a weekend,
also known as rifle spin.
Right. That's the easiest, or football
movement.
spin. Yeah. Right. I think football spin's the easiest one. Like football,
bullet
spinning
spin.
well, bullet spin.
Shot someone?
I still think football is better than that. Football spin would be like completely gyroscopic, right? So the tough thing with spin efficiency is that it doesn't account for the directionality of gyro degree. So you can throw a pitch with two different gyro degrees that have the same spin efficiency.
Positive, negative, you're saying?
Right? Yeah. So gyro degree can go positive, it can go negative because the ball can like turn clockwise along that axis or counterclockwise along that axis, but the efficiency, which is like the, I guess like true movement of or true like transfer spin. Movement of that pitch.
Yeah.
So with that, that's kind of where like efficiency can get muddy, not accounting for the directionality of gyro degree and how that's going to influence the movement of it. But I believe this question was more geared towards like change in efficiency due to like arc and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say on. I think it's a really good explanation and better than I could have given. Let's say specifically to the idea of like glove side versus arm side. The idea is, and again, this is like me rereading articles, getting it like drilling through my head. The idea is like the trajectory of the gyro vector of the pitch when it's thrown stays like.
Man, people aren't going to know what a vector is. Initial direction that it's going in.
Okay. But anyways, that stays proportional, or stays relative to the field.
Yeah.
Kind of keeps like going forward as the ball like continues to fall.
Yes.
Because of the effect of gravity on it. So some of that gyro spin turns into side spin.
Yep.
And like as it falls, like it usually for like righties, for example, almost always have a positive gyro degree, so it will fall towards glove side, and some of that gyro spin will turn into side spin.
Right. And
side spin is it's side spin and backspin or top spin that are components of true spin.
Yep.
So since the side spin increases and the gyro spin decreases, as it falls glove side,
right,
the overall spin efficiency increases.
Yeah.
And these are slight differences, which I think, like I said, if you haven't read Dan's article, then definitely absolutely do. This person obviously read it, and it's like a very good technical question.
Yeah. So like with when you throw a football and the nose, like as it's going in flight, the nose starts to tilt down as it changes in flight. A baseball doesn't do that.
Yep.
Right. So like out of hand, it's thrown as a football, right? And then the trajectory of the ball starts to go down, but the nose is still like staying up. But now that trajectory has changed, that like gyroscopic spin, it's now side spin, right?
Yeah.
Is that like basically it?
Yeah.
So because, in the football, when it changes that like nose tilting down, that would still be full gyro spin.
Yeah.
But a baseball doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So it's the axis and stuff. I think, spin axis degradation and like spin efficiency degradation is like super interesting field to potentially start to get into.
Yeah.
So we all just measure it out of hand. We don't know what happens like throughout the ball flight.
Well, Rapsoda does have
the zone
spin efficiency for release and zone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I honestly don't even. Yeah, like I don't know how much time you spent really getting into the physics of trajectory. Like, is there, like, are you into that kind of stuff, or like, what is intimidating or not intimidating? Like, what interests you about that kind of stuff?
I mean, I think it's all intimidating, honestly.
I honestly haven't looked into it too much, just because it's not like doesn't pertain to my main projects as far as the baseball technology and measurement goes. I actually summarized this question earlier, and after that explanation, understand more how my summary like didn't get the whole picture or the correct picture. But it's orientations in general, coming from a sensors background and trying to describe orientations with sensors is kind of like a daunting thing. And I know how hard orientations are. So just describing rotation in 3 axes of a baseball is just something that because it's not what I'm relying on to be like good at my job, it's something that I don't want to really get too far into the weeds on, or I haven't, because I know that it's a very, very abstract topic and tough to describe.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Dude,
no, that was a really good explanation, and I think I understand. Yeah. The idea of that specific idea about losing or gaining efficiency, and efficiency in general.
Yeah, I think whoever made the call to start doing like spin axis with like a clock, whoever decided to like start doing that is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because I think that's like super hard to understand conceptually, like 3D orientations and all that stuff. And like to tackle 2 of those dimensions of orientation with just being like, let's just throw a clock on there and use that to determine like what the axis is like way easier to explain. I think that's the issue. Doing that for efficiency is helpful as well, but then you run into the gyro degree problem.
I'll say as a quick teaser for the very Black Ops project that we don't name drop too much on the podcast. Yeah, there's an very interesting idea of how we're addressing that, like imputing access. But I'll tell you guys off air.
Intriguing.
Or again, the Venmo offer still stands.
Man, yeah, I really hope that project keeps going well, because very exciting stuff. All right. Next question.
Yep.
Question number 3. Again, all from a high school student. Really fire questions. How long does pitch design typically last from, quote, I want to change/improve this pitch, end quote, to, quote, I'm comfortable and happy with the changes we've made? So I think this is just like how long does it take to get comfortable, or stickiness of pitch design changes?
Right.
Stickiness meaning how well you can reproduce not foreign substances.
Yes. Yeah. Good clarification there.
Keep it BC, dog.
Good clarification there. What do you guys think?
So first off, I was gonna kind of address it in terms of that's a question that we ourselves Driveline have and want to address, and like what we've initially done in terms of data structure around it is we've actually redefined our pitch design workouts to have separate stages. Like someone comes in, we get their baseline pitch shape for whatever their arsenal is. We test it. We have them go into live at bats if possible, test it out there, come out of live at bats, see if they kept carrying it, and then have a final exit thing. So administrative wise, we have 4 or 5 different structured pitch design workouts around it.
Yeah.
I think an exact precise quantitative answer is we don't currently have. I think it's a very interesting thing. Yeah. And also obviously it depends, it's tough because it depends so much on a pitcher's own feel and ability to measure that comfortability. I know you yourself have well, first off, I was gonna say I know you yourself have from an athlete point of view have worked with Jakes and other people on designing your own pitches. I was gonna say the biggest thing is from pitch design trainers telling me is completely. Well, we're currently tracking stuff like cues and grips, which I think is really interesting, and I haven't gone too deep into the weeds on. But what cues work with someone, what cues work over a long sample of athletes. what grips are more liable to change. But yeah, like it's so dependent athlete by athlete. Bauer himself threw like hundreds of pitches and like dozens of sessions last winter working on a changeup.
I actually think it's like almost impossible because you're trying to objectively quantify a subjective feel.
Yeah.
Like even in the question, it's like, how do you get someone to the point of I'm comfortable and happy with the changes we've made? Like even if they hit every objective, metric that we're trying to put on this, all it takes is throwing that pitch and it being tatered to that, just like that's out the window, right? And I think so much of it is like, just from my perspective in messing with pitches, like for me, it's always been like the changeup has just been my worst pitch, and spending so much time working on it.
Yeah, mine too.
Trying to get a better one. Like even last year, like spent so much time with jigs, like messing around with changeups, and like I would take it into live ABs and it would just, feel good, felt like lights out, like right on right. I could crush with it. It was a good like out pitch against lefties. And then all it took was like kind of just like one bad outing, honestly, where the pitch was bad on like 2 occasions and I lost so much confidence in it.
I think it's good.
I just didn't even like return back to it after that, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it's good to take into account expectations. So the comfortable and happy with changes, like that can happen very quickly, possibly in a bullpen, but there's like different levels of that, like comfortable and happy in a game or comfortable and happy with a hitter standing in.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
I think it's a lot easier.
You're throwing at a command trainer.
Yeah. I think it gets that window shrinks up really quick as skill level. As you go up in like skill level in general, like really proprioceptive athletes that just have like a ton of feel. It's like you just give them a grip or a cue with a pitch and it's like, oh my God, they just like completely revamped their pitch. But maybe you do that with like a high school kid or someone who's not as skilled, doesn't really understand what their body's doing as much, a little less proprioception. Like you could bang away at the same cue, same grip for a while and they still might not like make any change, you know?
I was kind of just like thinking in my mind, like what possible attempt we could do to measure the comfortability. Like, it's like not a serious suggestion, but it'd be pretty funny to try to like ask them, like measure like heart rate or something, like have like and be like,
interesting.
All right, man, throw another changeup, but this time with spin axis, this and 2 more inches of horizontal break. Like, okay. Yeah, throw it again. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Maybe you could measure it in a game by like how often the pitch gets shaken off.
Yeah. Just like
Like if you did that with me, there was like a point in the beginning of the season where it was like anytime right on right changeup got called, like I was like, yeah, let's go, because I was so hyped on it. And then after that outing where it kind of got like ripped, and I think I beat someone with it too. After that, it was like every clutch situation or like big moment situation, it was like changeup got put down. I was like, no, get to slider, to the slider,
Yeah.
And that's another thing that could factor it in too, is like how confident you are in your other pitches, right? Because like, especially when you're out there, you're just going to go with whatever's working.
Yeah.
So like, if you just live and die by fastballs and sliders and like changeup gets put down, and it just compounds so easily, because if that's your 4th pitch and it's like on the fringe of not being used or in the arsenal, you're not using it much. It's not getting like the experience and reps it needs, so it just like compounds even more and more. So I think that's like quantifying something like that is going to be real tough, because you could like improve a change of pitch and maybe in the wrong direction or something, but you take it into a live situation and it strikes out 3 people, you might be like, all right, I got the hand of God pitch, right?
So there's your very discreet answer, number 3.
Yeah. This is a pretty tough one, but what do we got? You want to go to these next ones?
Yeah, before we can talk about very briefly, because like half our podcast is about it, and then we can talk about a little bit 5 and 6 together if you want.
Okay, yeah. Question number 4: what type of work does your R&D team do? Is it on an individual player level, or does their work center around the research that gets published on the website?
Just all of the above.
We take L's. That is the primary work that we do. We submit papers and they immediately get denied.
Yeah, I mean, to break out the L's a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, currently we go through periods of either being more research focused or more development focused, and oftentimes
Caravan and I are Team D. Team development.
I mean, we've been putting in art. We said last week we were going to put in some art.
Oh yeah,
we've been putting in
metric
art,
audit is pretty R.
Yeah.
Damn, Team R.
But we ride a fine line, I think, between supplying any R needs from our actual staff, the training floors. We want like to run investigations based on what they want, what kind of experiments they want.
Yep.
Our own investigations that we like, either do more formally through IRB or want to run as an idea to learn more about things. Service like individual players, service individual teams, service third parties, and then also just like potentially develop stuff that might not have an exact end goal, but we know it's good work, and we know once we get there, we can rely on either a market opening up or our like stamp and our connections opening up avenues towards it.
We do research on the like entirety of the data sets, but also like case studies and things, like anecdotes and theories help on an individual player level.
Yeah.
We do that research there to then develop systems and tools that impact players on like an individual basis. Like they come in and they give them that.
I think it all ties in together, because like the research that we do and gets published on the website, the ultimate goal is to use it for improving our program and improving our
help
ability
out the individual player.
And to improving our ability to improve somebody's skill set. So, and then that is used on the individual level and a team level. So
and there's a bunch of stuff.
And if you want more info, just listen to all 4 episodes that we put out so far.
Oh, and we do podcasts.
We name drop we reference quite a bit of the work we're doing.
Question number 5. What type of experience and education do you like to see from a prospective intern or employee who's applying for an R&D position or pitching position?
And I think we should read number 6 as well. Kind of
and then the question number 6, which ties into that one, is what can I be doing now in order to be more prepared to work in this field?
Hey, listen, we answered your question in the podcast. You're in.
That question
you got it.
is just like Crush the R&D podcast.
Yeah.
What do you got? Number 5, experience and education. What do you like to see? We got intern pool for summer. What do you want to see on all those applications?
I don't think generally we put too much weight in education anyway. The experience that we get, that applicants get from their education and their universities or athletic departments, etc., I think is important. But I know I was hired not off my education.
Speak for yourself. The only thing on my resume was my SAT score.
You got hired off that 2370.
Dude, I had my name, my phone number, my email, my SAT score.
Yeah. That'll do it if you almost get a perfect score.
No, I guess, I think we do have a tradition of not putting too much weight behind a sterling academic record. Not to say that hurts you or anything, but I think the biggest thing, and I have told this to a few people that have asked similar questions, is just having an initiative to do applied projects by yourself. Regardless of resources or time. We don't expect you necessarily to carry out the most complex, effort intensive thing by yourself, but just both attempting something and documenting it, and then finishing the process through, writing something up, publishing it either in a blog or whatever.
Right.
But the idea of just having an idea, having a way to approach it, tackling it, and then presenting what happened.
I would say a general hard sciences background, definitely pretty important on the R&D side. Just some form of a major or whatever it is that is in the scientific method is ingrained in there, testing things, research, understanding the basic fundamentals of research and what research does.
Right.
Understanding bias and how anecdotes and all these things are not research and that's not science, and that doesn't help, those kind of things. So just general hard science background, if you have that, very helpful, but definitely more important on the experience side. I think it shifts a bit, it kind of depends. I think there's a really good balance of like more experience, less technical, school side, but then also like having people that are the opposite of that. Like I think that bringing in employees with a background in education or like a more formal background can be really helpful at times, because like with the experience, individually like driven, motivated projects, you can get really sloppy.
Right.
And I think that is one thing that like school, higher education does, is like you get into the nitty gritty and you got to like follow the guidelines and the steps. And, you know, there's like a balance of executing and executing like properly kind of thing.
But puts the onus on like rigor and like thoroughness.
100%. Yeah. So I think in the early stages of like Driveline, like that didn't really matter.
Yeah.
It was just like execute, get stuff done. But now bringing in another portion of that, or like a different side, it's just like fresh eyes to really expose like things that we were doing wrong or like sloppily kind of things. And I think that is honestly the thing I'd be most excited about, is just like for R&D interns and stuff, is like fresh eyes. You know, like come in with no bias, come from a completely different field that does things like, you know, just way out there, and then look at our system and be like, okay, well that's dumb. Why don't you guys do this? This thing's going on over here. Cause we get trapped in our bubble all the time. You know,
definitely.
Like, I would love to bring someone in who just comes from some crazy background and just like, why do you guys do this? Why don't you do it this way? Oh my God, I've never even like thought to consider that, you know?
And I hope I speak for the whole department, but I know I speak for the three of us, but we're like always open to, like something new. Like I'm not stuck in any lines of thinking, you know, not to say that we're easily susceptible to something proposed out of the blue, but if we can evaluate it rationally and decide there's value in it, I'm more than happy to recalibrate ways I've been approaching things, taking in new information, make new evaluations. I love being presented with a new way to look at it, and to kind of loop it up again, like a couple more things, because I recently, you know, wrote up like a couple things I was looking for and sent it to Joe for past R&D interns in that last couple months. I would say it is quite important and increasingly more important to have either a coding background or like an ability to kind of run code by yourself, just because we are churning, we are fulfilling like so many clients at certain points in our time, and we have to deliver things that we can't just do manually. I think it's really important. I think juggling multiple projects at once is really important, because I mean, I definitely think that's one of the personality traits that is looked for, and it'd be like pretty funny to think of how ridiculous it'd be if, you know, all three of us were only ever like on one project, which happens in other job fields. But it'd just be, you're just like, that's not even, we can't even get a day to focus on one project, much less like that being our scope long term. And then third, just like passion for learning and passion for like tackling these projects, because you're gonna hit a bunch of speed bumps, and if you're not passionate about it, like it's gonna get really tough to overcome.
Definitely that. I think a couple of things that come to my mind would just be like broadening your expertise or knowledge like as much as you can. Like if you're an analyst more so, and you've spent a lot of time like absorbing and messing around with like publicly available data, like you got really deep into sabermetrics, like my advice to that person would be like, find a job or a position where you can get in the trenches and like be involved with baseball, like close up, and be involved with like the players, the coaches, understand how the game works from the level of the dugout, not from the level of like the box score. Right. And then same thing on the flip side, right? If you are someone who's like an ops person, who's been a coach, been a player, been heavily involved, like on in the trenches of baseball, in the dugout, get out of that and like do more in terms of like publicly available data, Saber stuff, those kind of things. I think, the more you can understand and communicate with both of those people, you're going to have a lot of success there.
Yeah.
What do you got? What do you think?
I think it's also like, it's also not bad to have other experiences where you have to work a job that's not giving you direct experience. I think working a shitty job is something that I know Brady worked or looked a lot for, and when he was doing most of the hiring. Yeah. And I think it's something that Driveline culture, we all work very hard around here. Everybody's got a lot on their plate. Again, with the passionate thing, like you have to have passion, you have to be able to work pretty hard. So it's not bad to have a shitty job that you got to endure for. Yeah. So
I think that was a lot of things, not necessarily one. I guess it'd be take all those and whichever one you don't have right now.
Grease our pockets a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I had to, simplify it down to just like what's one thing you could be doing right now, it'd just be listening to the podcast, right? Every Monday. That's all I got every Monday at noon.
It's paradoxical, but actually,
every Monday at noon Pacific.
Yeah, buddy.
Driveline Research and Drinks. We'll call it there.
Fire. Good morning.